What's up, everybody? FTWitachi here. You know what it is. We're getting into another Warlock Shadowlands guide here. Got a couple more to do before Shadowlands gets released, but without further ado, we're going to be talking about legendary items and legendary powers. Legendary items are a staple of World of Warcraft's expansions. In Shadowlands, legendary items are being reimagined. Instead of working to acquire a legendary gear piece, you'll work on acquiring materials that'll allow you to craft and add a legendary power to an existing legendary gear piece. Every class has 4 general legendary powers and 4 spec plus specific legendary powers. Meaning, every class will have 4 general legendary powers as clearly stated, and then for Demonology, you'll have 4 spec specific legendary powers, same thing for Affliction, and same thing for Demonology. So depending on whichever spec you're playing, you have 8 total legendary powers to go ahead and pull from. The 4 from your spec and 4 from your class. Before we get into which legendary power or which legendary item you would like to have as your Warlock, whether you are Affliction, Demonology, or Destruction, let's go ahead and go over these legendary powers in full. Starting off with the general Warlock powers. So Destruction, Affliction, and Demonology all have access to these legendary powers. Starting off with Claw of Endereth. Drain life now channels 100% faster and restores health 100% faster. The slots for this one are Waste and Feet. You got Pillars of the Dark Portal. Demonic Gateway is now instant cast, and your first use of the gateway does not trigger its cooldown. In addition, Nether Energy lashes enemies you pass through, knocking them away. Slots for this one will be Neck and Chest. Relic of Demonic Synergy. Demonology, damage done by you or your primary demons has a chance to grant the other one 15% increased damage for 15 seconds. Affliction and Destruction, damage done by you or your primary demon has a chance to grant the other one 10% increased damage for 15 seconds. Slot of Head and Shoulder. And then you've got Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. For Affliction, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Summon Dark Glare by 2 seconds. For Demonology, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Summon Demonic Tyrant by 0.6 seconds. And Destruction, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Summon Infernal by 1.5 seconds. This is for your wrist or finger. When it comes to an Affliction Warlock, you got Malefic Wrath. Malefic Rupture increases the damage of your Drain Soul and Shadow Bolt by 25% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 3 times for shoulder and hands. You got Perpetual Agony. Agony has a 20% increased chance to generate a Soul Shard, chest and finger slot. You got Sacrilash's Dark Strike. Corruption damage is increased by 15%, and any target affected by your corruption also has their movement speed slowed by 50%. Legs and feet slot. And then last but not least, Wrath of Consumption. Targets that die with your agony or corruption applied to them grant you Wrath of Consumption. Increases all periodic damage dealt by 5% for 20 seconds, and this does stack up to 5 times with the slots of feet and back. Demonology Warlock legendary powers are Bale Spider's Burning Core. Shadow Bolt increases the damage of your Demon Bolt by 8%, stacking up to 4 times, lasts 15 seconds. Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling. Each soul shard spent on Hand of Gul'dan increases the damage of your next called Dreadstalkers by 3%. That is for neck and wrist. Forces of the Horned Nightmares. Hand of Gul'dan has a 15% chance to cast a second time on your target for free. Shoulders and finger slot. And Implosive Potential. Implosion. Grants 1% haste for 8 seconds for each imp imploded. When this damages at least 3 targets, and instead gain 5% haste per imp. Slot of Head and Waist. Last but not least, the Destruction Warlock legendary powers. Cinders of the Az-Akir. You got Conflagrate, has 1 additional charge, and has its recharge time reduced by 3 seconds. Slot of Legs and Back. Embers of the Diabolic Remnant. You got Incinerate, now generates 100% additional soul shard fragments. Slot of Chest and Back. Madness of the Az-Akir. Chaos Bolt increases the damage of Chaos Bolt by 25% and reduces the cast time of Chaos Bolt by 20% for 3 seconds. Slots of Legs and Feet. And we got Odor, Shawl of the Ymrja. You got enemies marked by your habit take 25% increased damage from your single target spells. Slot of Waist and Legs. Alright, so next up, we're going to go over the legendary powers we're going to separate it by specs. So we're going to go Affliction, Destruction, and then Demonology options. And then we're going to go ahead and bring in the general options at the very end, because the general options are kind of class based, while the spec specific options I can go in a little bit of detail when I'm talking about that specific spec. So let's go ahead, start off with the 4 Affliction legendary options. We're going to always go from the bottom to the top. So starting off with Perpetual Agony of Ajikir. I strongly suggest you don't even use this. There seems to be an outlier in every single spec. There's always one legendary. So this is that one legendary. Just don't even bother using it. It has its benefits, of course, but other than that, it's not really better than the other 3 legendary powers. We're next up going to go ahead and get into Sacrolash Darkstrike. This one does have its situational usage. It is very, very nice when it comes to PvP content, and also when it comes to PvE content. If you are on an AoE situation where you do want to go ahead and multi-dot, that is also very, very useful. And of course, the situational slow when it comes to ads. Sometimes fights require those slows on ads. That could also be very, very helpful as well for your raid group. So Sacrolash does have its usage when it comes to PvP and PvE, but when it comes to damage, it is not top tier. The second one, which we're going to go with Wrath of the Consumption, this is number 2 on the list. It is definitely the second highest or second best option when it comes to damage, but it is my favorite option when it comes to mythics. And then last but not least, Malefic Wrath is hands down the best option when it comes to damage for an Affliction Warlock. Next up, we're going to get into the 4 Destruction legendary options. Again, starting off from the bottom, we have another outlier here, Embers of the Diabolic Raiment. It is very similar to the Affliction one, and that's just pretty much why I put it on the bottom of this tier. Next up, we're going to go into number 3 on the list, Madness of the Ajikir. Now, this is the second highest damage output legendary power, but I do have Odor of the Shawl ahead of Madness of the Ajikir, and the reason being is Odor of the Shawl is great for AoE fights. So it actually has more usage than Madness of the Ajikir, because Madness of the Ajikir is fighting with Cinders of the Ajikir, and when it comes to Cinders, that is the highest damage output legendary power to choose. So again, when it comes to Destruction Warlocks, at the top, Cinders of Ajikir, and then number 2, I go ahead and put Odor of the Shawl because it has nice situational AoE fights, even useful in battlegrounds and such when it comes to PvP and even arenas. Madness of the Ajikir is number 3, but it is second on the damage output. And then last but not least, don't even bother with it, Embers of the Diabolic Raiment. Last but not least, Demonology Warlock. Starting off from the bottom, Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling. It is decent, but it is damage-wise not one of your best options to go ahead and choose from. So I do have that at the bottom of the 4 options for Demonology. When it comes to the third selection, Forces of the Horned Nightmare, it is the second highest when it comes to damage output, but again, very similar to how Destruction, there was one fighting with the other. Bale Spider's Burning Core, which is my top talent, or my top legendary power to choose from, because Bale Spiders does have the most damage output. But at number 2, we have Implosive Potential. It is very situational when it comes to AoE fights, and it is very, very nice for mythics. But other than that, I do have Bale Spider's Burning Core as the best when it comes to damage output. Now, just a quick recap when it comes to these 4 options for each spec. With Afflictions, now we're going to be going from top to bottom. We have Malefic Wrath, then we have Wrath of Consumption, Sacrolash, Darkstrike, and then Perpetual Agony. For Destruction Warlocks, we have Cinders of the Ajikir, then we have Odor Shawl of the Ydimirja, then we have Madness of the Ajikir, and then we have Embers of the Diabolic Raiment. And then at number 1 for the Demonology spec, we have Bale Spider's Burning Core, we have Implosive Potential at number 2, Forces of the Horned Nightmare at number 3, and Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling at number 4. We're next up going to get into the 4 class general options, and the reason why I wanted to separate these from the other 3 is because one of these legendary options is very good for each and every spec. But we're going to go ahead and start off with Pillars of the Dark Portal. It is a very, very situational legendary power. It is not really, you're not going to see too much usage of this. It's basically Demonic Gateway is now an instant cast, and your first use of the gateway does not trigger its cooldown. It's kind of one of those flavorful, fun legendary powers, but if you're working on your damage or anything that's useful to you, again, Pillars of the Dark Portal is going to be very, very situational, which is one of my favorite legendary powers, but I do have it at the bottom of the tier for the general class options. At number 3, we have Claw of the Endereth. This is very, very useful when it comes to PvP content and PvP content only. Drain life now channels 100% faster and restores health 100% faster, but overall you're most likely not going to see too much usage out of this either, even if you are into PvP content. Next up at number 2, you have Relic of the Demonic Synergy. This is only useful for Demonology Warlocks. Damage done by you and your primary demon has a chance to grant the other one 15% increased damage for 15 seconds. I actually like this ability, and I do put it above any of the Demonology specific legendary powers. So Bale Spider's Burning Core was my top tier in the demonic options for Demonology, and I do put Relic of the Demonic Synergy above that option, just to give you all a heads up. But when it comes to Destruction and Affliction, don't even bother with Relic of the Demonic Synergy. And then last but not least, my favorite option out of every legendary power, Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. Whether you're playing Affliction, whether you're playing Demonology, or Destruction. Affliction, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Summon Dark Glare by 2 seconds. Demonology, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Demonic Tyrant by 0.6 seconds. And Destruction, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Summon Infernal by 1.5 seconds. This is my favorite legendary power, whether you're PvP, PvE, any area of the game, Affliction, Destruction, and Demonology. This is the best legendary power you can go ahead and choose for, which is nice because it is a general option which all 3 specs can go ahead and select from. But again, we're going to go ahead and end it off right here. We're going to go ahead and put on the screen so you guys can kind of see everything that we've basically gone over, all the legendary powers for those specs specifically, and I have them in order from top to bottom, from first to last. So, for those of you that tuned in, if you have questions, post in the comment section down below or live stream chats whenever I'm live. And just go ahead and hit us up anywhere you want. Catch you guys next time. Thank you all very much for tuning in, by the way. Peace out and have a wonderful day.